All right, welcome back, dear viewers. Today I'm going to talk about Shadowdark. I know I'm probably late to the game, no pun intended, on this because it's been like the talk of the town for a good year now. People have been making videos, but I didn't want to do anything with it until I got a chance to play. And that's what my channel's about. Like I want to show receipts. Like, look, I didn't get like a free review copy, and I'm going to talk about it and try to get clicks or whatever. I run games, I record myself running those games, and then I talk about them. I got nothing against a flip through review, but I just don't think you get anything out of them, with the exception of a few channels out there. Um, and I think Shadowdark is a good example of a game that, like, on your first read through, you might be like, "This doesn't. Maybe, maybe I'll like this or not." But then once you play it, it starts to make sense, and that's been my experience with Shadowdark at this point. And I'll explain. So, so yeah, okay. So when this book came out, I mean, it created ripples, right? I mean, if you were in the indie scene at the time, it was like this big thing, and some people, I think, were being very unfair to the Arcane Library and what Shadowdark is. Um, People argued that it was derivative, but hey, if you're OSR or any kind of D&D game, you're going to be derivative. Sorry, guy. Um, I think a lot of people said that the author, oh, this book is only popular because the author's a woman. I think that's denigrating and doesn't give credit where credit is due. I mean, this is a good game. I mean, it is a very good game. I mean, my first impression upon reading the rules was I was like, yeah, it's okay. It's got some cool stuff, but it is what it is. But then when I played it, I had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun with it. And this kind of brings me to sort of one of my, I guess, tenets or principles in GMing philosophy is you really should play the game rules as written, any game, before you start homebrewing it. You need to see how the game plays out. There's a whole host of reasons why you would homebrew. I'm not going to get into that, but um, but I am going to say sometimes a rule system or rule set or subsystem or whatever, uh, taken in isolation might not make any sense. It may even sound stupid. But then once you see it in play, you'll see how the part fits. And this is a good game that kind of examines this, or is an example of this. Um, I mentioned the Bro SR here. If you don't know who they are, just jump on Twitter and search for it. Um, that's like one of their central premises. If you play Advanced Dungeons and Dragons First Edition rules as written and don't change a thing, you're going to experience a game that is just beyond what you could have imagined. And I guess it's sort of like the sum is greater than the whole of its parts. Okay, um, so and I think just that's just good advice all around when running a game. So let's get started. I'm going to talk about the art first. I don't know how to talk about art. I've said this before, but I think the art here is really cool. All right, so I hope I don't sound like a philistine or some uneducated moron. But it's all black and white. It's all like this really stark contrast, black, whites. It's like, and it really kind of gives you, um, it sets the tone. It sets the tone of this game. What is expected. This is the cover. It doesn't even say Shadow Dark on it. It's just this weird, creepy, uh, not beholder. I think she calls it like a ten-eyed oracle. Yeah, but just imagine you're in a dark cave. You got a torch and it flickers, right? It's not like a flashlight. It's flickering and it's not. Sometimes it's strong, sometimes it's weak, and it's constant shifting. And the dark seems to be kind of moving in on you. And you round the corner, and then the light just starts to illuminate this creature coming through the archway. I mean, this this really does capture, in my mind, what dungeon crawling is, and it's one of the reasons why I like Lamentations of the Flame Princess. It's why Veins of the Earth, if you ever a chance to read that book, get a copy of it, whatever, you should. It really drives home that only crazy people go into dungeons. Okay, I think I would rather be. Yeah, well, I don't know. I'd like to say I would be like an adventurer in the Middle Ages, but in all honesty, the safety of my little shitty farm would probably be nice, all things considered. Um, but there is a whole lot of art in this book, but what you see there is classic. It's not like this goofy anime style with all these spiky bits on the armors and like this oversized weapons. It's very realistic, and it brings me back to the early days when I was playing, and where like Larry Elmore's or Clyde Caldwell would kind of drag me in because it seems so real. And if that's real, then maybe what I'm going to experience has some level of reality to it. Um, the art here is definitely not the sanitized crap you get from Wizards of the Coast. So um, this game is serious, and it's no joke. It's awesome, and the art's great. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the layout too. The layout I think is really nice. Now this book is quite thick. Okay, all right. Um, but you can see that's got like the tabs, and it's also got a nice little ribbon. But the layout isn't good. Because a lot of the stuff is all on one page or two pages when you open it up. So you're not flipping a whole lot. Once you get your quote unquote book control and you understand where everything is, this is great. Maybe split this into two books. So you have the rules and then all these awesome tables that are in the back. As sort of like a game master guide or something. Maybe that would have improved it just a little bit, but I'm nitpicking. That's just a nitpicky thing. I'm not saying this game sucks at all. Because of the layout. I think the layout's actually really good. The character classes, uh, four standard classes from the classic game: fighter, thief, cleric, and magic user. And she uses the word thief. It's not a rogue; it's a thief, and I like that. It brings me back to the old days. This is actually a picture of the thief, and look at him. He's climbing down a rope trying to get to a treasure chest. I mean, I love it. It's awesome. Um, it really helps evoke like old school dungeon crawling. Um, each class has what you expect, what their weapon and armor restrictions are, and their main function as a class. So like fighters are going to fight, and they have like this grit ability where they get advantage on strength or dexterity checks. Your thief, excuse me, your thief uh, can do all these cool thief things, picking locks, searching for traps, things like that, but also get the backstab. And then, of course, clerics and magic users have their spells. What I do like too, and I think is an interesting game design choice and one that I wholeheartedly support, rather than tie languages to a race, which I think previous editions of the world's most popular role-playing game has done, she's tied it to class. So like your wizard starts out with all these languages. So your wizard's actually, even though he's got 1d4 hit points, he's quite useful. So even if his spells don't go off the way they're supposed to, and I'll get into that soon, the your magic user is the scholar, and I sort of feel like earlier editions of the game that's always been implied, but there's no quote unquote rules to do it. So I know for me, I was always sort of just doing like make an intelligence check, dude. You understand these runes, just make that intelligence check. I was always making that kind of a ruling, and here she's put it in there like you have these languages. Um, Character classes also have random advancement tables, so you roll a 2d6 and check a chart. They'll give you a bonus to an ability score, +1 to, or an advantage or something to one of your core skills and abilities, um, which I like. Initially, and here's an example, when I first looked at it, I was like, I sort of feel like these could have been expanded a bit more beyond 2d6. But after playing it, it makes perfect sense because this game is designed for players to sort of think outside the box and then the game master make a ruling rather than open up the book. And that's exactly the kind of game I like to run. So yeah, it makes perfect sense to me after playing it. And what's really cool is the way these character classes are designed. It's really easy to kind of homebrew your own. If you that's your thing. In fact, these zines here contain additional classes. This one's my favorite, Curse Scroll number 3, because it's got a bunch of Viking stuff in it. I'm kind of on a Viking kick lately. Stay tuned, dear viewer. Something's coming down the pike here. But yeah, I really like the system. It's really quick, easy. You can easily homebrew whatever. Similarly with Ancestry, uh, you're not allowed to say race anymore, apparently. But she uses word ancestry. It's the same damn thing. Um, you can do that too. Like if you want to, there's no gnomes, but I'm sure you can figure it out. Come up with your own little gnome background. But these ancestries are real simple. Gives a description and an ability, and that's it. There's no +1 to this, -2 to that, yada yada yada. Elves, for example, get a +1 to their spellcraft roll or a ranged attack. Dwarves get advantage on rolling for hit points. Humans start the game with 2 rolls on the talent table for their class, things like that. What I don't get is why she included Goblin. Um, I guess that's a modern thing, like especially if you spend too much time on Reddit, people have a lot of stupid, weird art about goblins, goblin females in particular. Maybe that's the thing. I don't know. I don't know. In my game, because I wanted something more classic to introduce the kids to, I just turned the goblin into a half elf because there's no half elf. I don't know why there's no half elf. Um, and the goblin's ability is they're never surprised, and I think that made sense for a half elf. And if anything, I think it made more sense. So, but but yeah, and then there's also a background chart that your characters will roll on to see what they start out with, and that this is kind of like the second edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons secondary skills, where it's sort of like there's like this implication of all these things that you can do related to that occupation. That's exactly what this is. So the players hopefully are looking at the background and going, "Oh, hey, I'm a former minstrel. Can I like play a song and blah blah blah?" And then you, the game master, will give them advantage on the check. Um, I like that. I've incorporated that in my Lamentations game long ago when I started running Lamentations of Elemental Evil. Little, the way it's implemented is a little different, but I do like basic generic backgrounds more so than skills. All right, we got to talk about magic. This is not a Vancian system at all. You're not memorizing spells and then they disappear from your soul, your brain, whatever. It's you have a number of spells that you know, okay, but you can cast them as many times as you want. The thing is, though, you have to make a spellcrafting check, and if you fail, something bad happens. I really like this. I think this makes magic dangerous and fun and exciting. In fact, my buddy's playing a wizened old wizard, and he tried to cast mage armor on himself, and it didn't work. And so he was all like, I think he was like shocked or something, and he couldn't. He was like stunned for a turn. Um, but it's really easy. It's well, that should say 10 plus spell tier level. Dang it, there's always one typo. Anyway, so yeah, and then so the cleric and the magic user could get bonuses to this roll as they gain levels. Um, if the cleric fails, they can't cast that spell again until they atone, and atone requires money to be spent, and that's all determined by spell tier level. And there's 5 levels for both magic and cleric. If the magic user fails, there are mishap tables per by tier that you roll on, and it is crazy the stuff that can happen. I really like it, and this my only, I guess, complaint. It's not a complaint, criticism. Little tiny criticism. I think Lamentations does this a little better. And that's because Lamentations tied cleric spells to alignment, where this game really doesn't. And there is alignments in gods that's sort of like in the setting, but um, Lamentations is like if you're a cleric, you're just going to cast these spells because you're lawful and there's order to the universe. Whereas magic users are chaotic, and some of the alternative spell rules for Lamentations, it's like just like this. If you fail a roll, bad stuff's going to happen. That makes a lot of sense to me. But it is what it is. I'm not saying don't buy the book because clerics can lose some spells. It's just um, not something I think I would prefer, if that makes sense. But at the same time, though, the fact that it costs money ties this into something that I'll get into later. So it's a tight system at the end of the day. All right, level advancement. There are 10 levels, okay, and you just need 10 XP times your current level to get to the next level. There's some fun little titles associated with your level and the alignment you picked. So, for example, a neutral level 1 wizard is a shaman, right? However, there's no rules for really owning land or doing any kind of patron level stuff. So, the domain play stuff, it's like, so the titles are kind of, I don't know, it's just fun. Like a way of describing your character, I guess. But that's about it. Um, XP and gaining levels is tied to treasure, and that is it. Gaining XP for killing monsters is purely a optional mode of play, and it's one that I've actually adopted because there's another thing you can do to get XP, carousing, that I don't think would be appropriate for kids. Not to say that these rules will go into like hardcore or anything. It's just I'm not gonna tell my 8-year-old kid, "Oh, hey, you got really drunk. Here's 2 XP." I'm not gonna do that. But there are carousing rules where you expend gold to go on like a drinking spree, and then you get XP. Um, and this is really like the core of the game, and I think is brilliant, and ties into the cleric thing. Your players are going to be spending money, whether it's buying better stuff, going carousing, trying to stay in good with their god, that sort of thing. And then they are going to have to go back out and adventure again. Um, the a friend of mine that I is a very good game master, Gary. He likes to say, starve your players, keep them hungry, and I think he's 100% right. Like, so this game is going to get players to go out there and adventure. Uh, so, and I just think that's just brilliant. Like how tight this is connected. So, all right. So gameplay um, is great. Like initially I'm looking at the book and I'm like, well, it seems kind of sparse, almost too sparse. But like 5th edition, everything is boiled down to that D20 plus attribute roll. And but there's not a rule for everything, so it really leaves it open for creative players to just say, "This is what I'm doing," and then the game master saying, "Okay, make this kind of a roll." Um, my son, when I did a little solo adventure with him, he was facing off with 2 goblins sitting at playing cards at a table with a candle. Well, he knew he was outnumbered, and he's got a torch in one hand and a short sword in the other. So he just tells me, "Can I just slap the candle into the face of one of the goblins?" I'm like, "Heck yeah, you can," and it worked. He blinded a goblin for 1 round. He was able to kill the other one, and then the first goblin who was blinded fails his morale check and runs off. It was awesome. It was just a great encounter, and that's what this game really focuses on. I think that's great. Um, Light sources are obviously emphasized. This is the Shadowdark after all. There is no infravision or dark vision, which I absolutely love. I think infravision and dark vision suck. I just hate those rules, and so I love this. It's kind of gimmicky though. You set a timer, a real life timer, for 60 minutes, and when the 60 minutes of game in real life game time run out, your torch goes out. I think that's a good way of kind of like focusing players, though I do think it's a little bit gimmicky. Um, but as a game master who admittedly sometimes forgets to keep track of time and when torches are going to go out, and I all of a sudden realize I haven't been like putting my little hash marks on my sheet. um, the timer does kind of help a little bit. Encounters are rolled based on the threat level of the area, and there's just three: unsafe, risky, and deadly. um, and when a torch goes out, you're automatically in deadly territory. um, Crawling, expert, what she calls the exploration phase, crawling, is all just go around the table. I mean, it's like almost like a board game. And now, initially, I don't want to say this, when I read the books, I'm like, this is like a board game. Like this is just a board game, but it actually works, and it's intuitive, and it makes things. It just everything makes sense doing it that way. Um, Movement. She uses range bands, close, near, and far. Near is like maybe 30 feet. And how? Let's be honest. How many of you out there, with your, how many of you are actually paying attention to the range, especially if you're doing theater of the mind? You just say, yeah, you're close enough. You can attack. That's what I do. You know, um, resting um, is like 5e. So a full rest heals you, but she ties it to rations, which I like. So if you don't have rations, you're not getting the full rest. So um, yeah, this is just sort of like a ex, uh, expanding on the whole target number system, and that this is what she uses, which I think makes a lot of sense because you're not going to see a lot of math either. It's really just attribute bonus. Maybe there might be something else, but generally it's that. Or you might have advantage, disadvantage, which is, you roll twice and keep the highest if you have an advantage, roll twice, keep the lowest if you have a disadvantage. And then she also utilizes a luck token feature where you reward for great role playing or heroic stuff. That's cool things that happen in the game, and that allows you to just get an advantage or excuse me, an advantage on a roll. And you can also hand them off to friends who might be in trouble. Like, oh, go ahead, use my luck token. So I like that. It kind of builds teamwork too. And I do think dungeon crawling and adventuring is a team sport. Combat, very simple and intuitive. That whoever gets surprise goes first, and then you roll initiative by dexterity check. Whoever gets the highest goes first, and then it's around the table again. Like, I love it. Um, and players can take an action and a move. Terrain can affect combat, just like it can affect the exploration, which could grant advantage or disadvantage. The morale check is a little odd. It's a DC 15 wisdom check. I'm not, and if they fail, they run. So like, it's really hard for them to keep fighting once they're at 50% capability. Um, I'm not sure if I agree, but it is what it is. Um, like it just seems to me a creature with a high wisdom might run just because it's the smart thing to do. I don't know. But anyway, death is a good balance between classic OSR and what 5e does. You basically roll a d4 plus your con mod, and that's how many rounds you have to get stabilized. During that time, you'll roll a d20. If you roll a 20, so that's a 5% chance. If you roll that 20, you get up with 1 hit point. So there's none of this, death save crap. It's no, you're dying, but you might get lucky. You know. Overland Travel. Very simple, but functions very similar to dungeon crawling. The areas on the hex map will have threat ratings, which will determine how often you roll, but that's deemed in terms of hours. So like unsafe is every 3 hours. So if you're crawling and walking, which takes you 4 hours per hex, you're probably going to crawl 2 hexes a day. That will probably be 2 encounters. Where if it's a deadly area of the map, which is every hour, that's 8 encounters. That's not any joke. So, but when you look at the encounter tables in the back of the book, they're not all combat oriented. They're just like weird things that the game master has to like kind of interpret. So it's not. I mean, it could be deadly. It probably is. So, um, there's well, I do like the fact that there's a navigation rule too, so you don't get lost. And then downtime. I already kind of talked about the carousing, but that really does the carousing rules really do sort of provide you with that Conan the Barbarian sort of pulp sword and sorcery. You just had this awesome adventure, this awesome heist, and then you go and blow all your money, you know, at a bar for a couple days or maybe longer, you know, um, and then you get XP for it. But she does have this other downtime activity called learning, where the player basically comes up with their own thing and says, "Hey, can my character learn how to do this?" And talks with the game master, and they come up with, well, you know, what would this allow you to do to kind of give you an advantage or a bonus in these certain circumstances, and then and you know, once you come to an agreement, you then make this intelligence check, which is really hard. Extreme intelligence check is an 18. If you fail, the next downtime you can try again, but it'll be improved one step. So eventually you'll get it, hopefully. Um, Game Master section, I actually am really impressed with because I don't usually see this, or at least it's done the way she's presented it. It's got a lot of cool advice in it and how to run this game and and the sort of like the philosophy of the game. Um, there's none of this. You're a storyteller. It's more like, hey, you know, be fair. Balance is something that's not always there. You know, attack the light sources. Make it challenging for your players. There's really cool bits of advice in there that I like. Um, this Game Master section also contains a lot of optional rules. She calls modes of play. Like you can reduce the torch time to 30 minutes. There's a more deadly mode where you just die. You only have one round to get stabilized. There's a pulp mode where players get more luck dice, and so it's just a little bit more like a fun adventure, you know. And then you can use the luck dice for creating a critical hit if you'd like. Goes into random encounters, which is pretty standard. What I do like though is there's a chart for what the creature is doing. And I like that. It helps for someone like myself who likes to kind of like think on the fly for these encounters. So it's not just okay, you find five goblins. It's you find five goblins playing cards, or you find five goblins who are like arguing with each other. You know, that helps develop the encounter so it's something unique and different and fun, and it gives the players something to work with when they're coming up with what they want to do. You know, every random encounter, of course, has a 50% chance of containing treasure. There is a traps and hazards section, which I think could be a little bit more developed, but it's functional. You know, it's good. And then there's a gauntlet rule set in here that is essentially where the players are playing zeroth level characters. If you know what a Dungeon Crawl Classics funnel is, that's exactly what this is. But basically, you play these zeroth level characters, run them through an adventure, and whoever survives becomes a level one adventurer. Okay, and there's rules for generating those characters and running those games. Awards. Okay, so like I said earlier, everything's about the treasure, and this is essentially your guidepost for how to like award XP based on the treasure that's found. I find this a little, I've almost a little too much discretion to the game master, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But it's for the most part straightforward. Once I started playing it, like I felt a little bit more comfortable with it. Um, but it's not going to be like some formula. It's, you know, you found a bag of gold, awesome, you get an XP. Everyone gets an XP. You found a really powerful magic sword, everyone gets 3 XP. You know, you find the staff of Ord, which is a unique magic item in the back of the book, everyone gets 10 XP. You know, pretty straightforward. All right. So then at this point, The rest of the book contains table after table after table. Everything from hex map generation tables, settlement generators, wilderness encounters, dungeon encounters, city encounters, um, generating random NPCs. Um, they're really useful, and it's nice to see. Because you don't usually see something like that unless it's like an old school D&D game. Um, monster section is really good. I put an example up here of what an entry looks like. I love it. It's crisp, clean. It has everything I need. Nothing extraneous, and I really like that. The treasure tables are okay. I mean, I kind of I'm still I'm biased. I'm really a big fan of the second edition treasure generation tables, but they're good, and it's all based on tier. And usually, the higher the tier, the more likely the players are going to get something that's worth 3 XP. You know, magic item. There's a magic item generation table, so you can create your own unique magic items. Um, oh, and I should also mention there is a monster generation section in there too, so you can create unique monsters. So very cool stuff. I mean, it's like a nice full-on toolkit for you, the game master, and you don't have to. While there's a lot of discretion and rules as written stuff going on with gameplay, when you're sitting down to write an adventure or prepping for a game session, you have a lot of tools at your disposal to prep, and it's wonderful. And even if you're stuck or not prepping or players go off and do your own thing, boom. I mean, if you know where it is in the book, you're gonna be able to just roll on the tables and still have a quality session. Okay, so final analysis um, and some minor criticisms. First, I love how quick and simple the rules are. Easy to pick up. It's why I chose to use this over the Rules Cyclopedia or BECME with my son. I mean, I played when I was his age. I played BECME, but if I, truth be told, I didn't fully understand all the rules. In fact, I didn't understand um, the Isle of Dread at all. I didn't understand how to do a hex crawl, and I never did a hex crawl until way later. So, um, so this is nice to like as an introduction. I think this is also nice as an introduction for players who are used to like more crunchier rule sets, like 5e Pathfinder, and then to sort of introduce them to like the old school Renaissance, the OSR style of play, because there's going to be a lot of the game mechanics are familiar, right? And then all it's just a matter of like, hey, what do you want to do? Just tell me what you want to do, you know. Uh, I love the random character advancement, but I think I might expand on the backgrounds just a bit, but not much more. I mean, you get plenty. I think there's 20 of them. I might expand on it a little bit, but it's just I'm being nitpicky here. Uh, the treasure and the experience point system seems to provide GMs with a bit too much discretion. Maybe I'm overly cautious, but it's been my experience that players like to keep track of their points, and those points are XP and gold. And if I can just see an argument potentially arising where players think they found enough treasure for like 3 XP, and the game master's like, no, 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 it's 1 XP. You get 1 XP for this. Um, I don't know, just something to keep in mind, I guess. But again, just nitpicky, just nitpicky. Uh, there's no rules for hirelings or domain play. Maybe that's a criticism. Maybe that's actually a feature and not a bug. You know, when I think of this game, especially in conjunction with the carousing rules, I really do think of Conan the Barbarian. Like, you're just out adventuring and then getting drunk at the bar. So, um, and maybe that's all you need for sword and sorcery. You know, do you really need to be an adventurer, conqueror king in all your games? Maybe not. You know, so but overall, I really like this game. This is going to become my go-to for sword and sorcery and beer and pretzel type games. And yeah, I'm really glad I picked it up. I'm glad my son really likes it. Uh, and I'm hoping we play more Shadowdark on the Borderlands. Uh, so we'll see about that. It's $59 at the Arcane Library. Okay, and look, you get a toolkit, you get all kinds of cool stuff, and just a great game. So, all right, that's all I got for you, dear viewers. I appreciate it as always. Um, Please hit like and subscribe and the bell icon. Share this around. Let people know. And until next time, take it easy.